Freight brokers, how do you get money out of a shipper who doesn't pay their bills? In this video, we're going to cover a few ways that we've gotten money out of shippers who are delinquent on their payments for a really long period of time. Now, if you're new to the channel, welcome to Freight Skills. My name is Lewis, and I'm happy to have you here. If you're interested in the most modern and up-to-date freight broker information, make sure you like this video and subscribe to this channel because I don't want you to miss any of the updates. We put out videos on a weekly basis. All right, now I don't want to waste your time, so let's get right into this really hot topic: how you collect money from shippers who don't pay their bills. Now, I don't know what it is, but over the last 15 years of freight brokering, collecting money has always been the biggest struggle that I've dealt with personally and just as a business. It's one of the biggest issues that we have. For some reason, shippers, not all of them, some of them, think that if something goes wrong during a shipment or something goes wrong on their end of the business, which we have no part of, that the first cost that they're going to neglect to pay is the shipment to the freight broker. It's crazy, and it happens every single day. We've gotten stiffed. Just a quick story. We've had a shipper have decent credit with us, run up a bill of about $55,000 to $80,000, and once they hit the $8,000 mark, I remember one day I walked into the office and I said, all right, today, this guy's getting his statement, sent the statement, the email bounced back. I went on DNBI, Dun & Bradstreet. I checked their credit score just for the heck of it, and it turned out they went bankrupt. So $80,000 basically evaporated. They owed so many people money that through the bankruptcy proceedings, we did not get a single penny because they had so many creditors to pay off. Making sure your shippers are paying their bills is something that needs to be on the top of your list if you're a freight broker, no matter what stage of the game that you're at. Fortunately, I've been doing this a long time. I know different ways to get money out of shippers, and I'm going to tell you a few that we use. And I'm going to give you a resource. I was debating doing it, but I am going to give a resource, but I'm not going to make it easy to get. So just make sure you watch to the end to see what that is and how to get it. Now, the first point in collecting from shippers is to make sure that you're working with shippers who have a good credit score to begin with. Now, if you're factoring, your factoring company should provide basic credit ratings for your customers, which will allow you to do business up to a certain level. So factoring companies will basically say, so-and-so brokerage, we're willing to take on X amount of risk for this shipper. You're welcome to take any work that you want. The factoring company will guarantee that in payment to you, right? So if they say this customer is approved for 10K and you do 11K of work, they'll guarantee 10 of it, but that last 1K is your risk. We use Dun & Bradstreet. It's a little pricey. I have no affiliation with them, but that's who we use to do our credit checks. We check something called the Paydex score. If the Paydex score is anything below a 70, we'll usually do some things that I'm going to tell you in a second to make sure that we get paid on time. All right, so before we get into what to do, you need to make sure that you're checking your customer's credit, check the size, check references. All of these things are really important when you're doing business with shippers who you're not familiar with. Let's get into the number one way of collecting money from a shipper that isn't illegal. That's a good point to bring up. When it comes to collecting money from a shipper, a lot of people will say like, oh, you can't hold freight hostage. Let me clarify something on that. When a shipper owes you money and they continue to give you business, the only time it's illegal for you to hold freight hostage is if you're holding a current shipment for a past due balance. By law, when a carrier is holding a load, they have every right to hold that freight until payment is settled. So technically, every carrier you give a load to can choose to do it for upfront payment. When you broker it, that lien on the freight transfers to you. All right, so as long as you pay the carrier, you have the ability, and again, this is not legal or law advice, it's just my experience, and don't listen to me. You have the ability to tell your shipper like, hey, we're having problems with payment with you. We have the shipment that you gave us today, but unfortunately to complete delivery, we need you to be paying up front for this shipment. You have the right to take away credit terms, just like they have the right to take away credit terms from their customer. It's not nefarious or illegal unless you say, okay, Mr. Shipper, Mrs. Shipper, you gave us this load today, but you owe us for 3 loads last week. So this load is sitting in my warehouse until you pay those 3 loads. That's illegal. Can they do anything about it? I'm not going to tell you yes or no. You can find that out for yourself if you choose to go down that route. I don't recommend it. It's really dirty, we'll give you a bad name, we'll ruin your reputation. You can't hold freight hostage for past work, but you can enforce your lien on freight that you're moving for that work. The number one thing that we do to protect ourselves from non-paying shippers is to demand upfront payment. What this usually looks like is if we find a bad credit rating or we get some bad references from a customer, but we don't want to turn down the business, what we'll do is we'll send a nice email to the shipper and we'll say, thank you for choosing us to move this load with you. Unfortunately, we're unable to extend credit at this time. We're having a little trouble running it, but for this shipment only, we would appreciate it if you can do a good faith deposit of 50% or pay this particular load up front, and then we could work on extending credit terms up to $5,000 to $10,000. So you could rewind that, play it again. That's the email that we send to shippers to get them to prepay work. All right, prepayment's the best. It helps you pay your carriers quickly. It helps with your cash flow. But we only do that with smaller shippers and shippers who just have credit that's absolutely in the dumps. It's not really sustainable because bigger shippers aren't going to pay you up front. It's just not going to happen. So that's the number one way you can mitigate your risk with non-paying customers. Let's talk about the second thing that we do, which is when you do a load and the shipper goes 60, 90 days and hasn't paid their bill, or just something's just going on. The first thing that we do, the first step in collecting money from your shipper, is to have a phone conversation. You want to call them up, you want to speak to the accounting department, and you want to confirm with them that they received your bill and if anything is missing from that bill. Because before you put the blame on somebody else, you have to reflect and say, maybe I did something wrong. Maybe I didn't send the email to the right place. Maybe it got lost in the inbox. Maybe it got lost in the mail if they take hard copies. So before you go burn down the bridges and start banging on the door, you have to make sure that you did everything right. So the first step in collecting money from a shipper is calling them up on the phone, not email, on the phone, and asking them if they can verify or have a second to walk through the invoices that are currently outstanding. It doesn't have to be hostile. Doesn't have to be rude, mean, nothing. It's just a friendly business-to-business conversation with the manager of accounts payable. All right, that is step one. If that goes bad, if they can't confirm or if they can't get you a set pay date based off of all that information, now we got to turn it up a notch. The first step is a threatening letter. Now, what does it say in this threatening letter? This is the resource I'm going to give you. If you've watched this far, and you want the threatening letter that I send, or some examples of threatening letters that I send, you have to email me and say collections letter, and I'll send it to you. I'm not making this available online. You have to email me personally. It's right down below, lewis@freightskills.com, and say threatening letter in the subject line. If you don't follow those instructions, I'm not going to send it because I have to be able to see it quickly. In the threatening letter, we tell them a few things. Number one, we cite the CFR in which freight bills have to be paid within 14 days of receipt, and we're now enforcing that. And there will be legal repercussions if they don't pay up quickly. Number two, we tell them that we paid our carrier and that the carrier has assigned their right of assignment to us now that we have paid them and fulfilled all our obligation, okay? Number three, we tell them that if we don't hear back from them in the next 24 business hours, we are going to contact every single party on the bill of lading and let them know that they are financially insolvent. In other words, you got no money. How do you think a shipper would feel if they sold something to a customer and you called them up and say, hey, your customer, your vendor that sold us that stuff, yeah, you have to pay for it now because you're on the bill of lading and your shipper, whoever you're dealing with, isn't paying their bills. Guess what? That gets their attention really quickly. Usually they'll respond within a few minutes and they'll say like, oh, you can't do that. You can't contact my customer, at which time you do contact the customer and you have them help you with the collection. That's the most powerful way of collecting money from shippers. That's really what we default to. We do it all the time, but you have to accept that after you do that, your relationship with that shipper is over and you're gonna have to really work hard to get the money out of them. So that's why I encourage you to do a phone hookup first. Link up with the accounting department, get to the bottom of everything. Don't just jump the gun and start sending threatening letters. If that doesn't work, the threatening letter from you didn't work, the next thing that you have to do is you have to get a lawyer involved, if you want. Or you can skip to step 3, which we'll talk on in a second. The lawyer letter carries more weight than the letter from broker, right? If I send a letter from Lewis, sounds a lot better if it's coming from so-and-so, Esquire, freight attorney at law. So I would call up a lawyer. They'll send it for a few $100s. You might have to give them like a retainer of a few $1,000s. But if you're spending these resources on collecting, then it's more likely that you're at the point that you need it anyway. So you call up the lawyer, let them know what's going on. They will send a collections letter to them, let them know they're in breach of contract and that you're going to take things further. All right, so that's threat number 2, coming from the lawyer. If that doesn't work, you have 2 options. Number 1 is you sue them. So you take it up a notch. You have a lawyer sue them, collect them, cause a lot of problems for them, and hope that you get a positive outcome on the case. If you don't want to do that and you want a little bit easier route, what I do is I go to a collections agency. If you Google freight collections agency, I don't want to advertise for any of them individually. I don't have any partnerships with them, and honestly, I haven't gotten on the phone with a lot of them where I can say, like, I trust these people to help you all the time. I use a few different ones depending on the reaction I want from the shipper. If you go to a collections agency, they know the freight laws better than anybody, and what they'll do is they will take a percentage of the freight bill and they will legally go after every single party that is due to pay you. So they'll go after the shipper, the consignee, the end client, anybody who has an interest in the shipment. They have the power to go after and try to enforce payment on them. That's much easier. And the good thing about a collections agency is you don't pay unless they succeed. So sometimes if a customer owes you like $10,000, or in my case, $80,000, I don't have time to collect that. I really don't want to spend the money on a lawyer to collect it. So what I do is I assign that to a collections agency who happily does all of that work for you. They know the laws, they know what to do, they know how to do it, what they do every day. I'd rather trust them with it, outsource it, and they get to keep their 10 to 30%. I'd rather just cut my losses, get a little bit back, move on to the next shipper. All right, so that's how you collect money from delinquent bills from shippers. All right, and like I said, if you want the payment collections resource, I'm not making it public. If you watched to that point in the video and this point in the video, if you email me, lewis@freightskills.com, I just put something in the subject line like collections letter, something like that. I'll send you the free resource. Happy to do it. It's the same one that we use. It's got me a lot of collections, and you'll be able to tailor it to your own liking. All right, so hopefully you enjoyed this video. Hopefully this helps you collect some money. And if you want some more help with this brokering stuff, go down in the description below. I have a bunch of free resources you can go through, free and paid. I have a program that I help people directly. I have groups, all that stuff, right down in the description below. Until the next video, I'll see you soon.